Yeah, the BBC are being told off for blanket coverage of the day that Prince Philip died, of course, blanket coverage. I'm not sure they deserve the criticism, but what do you think?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I would be the first to complain about the BBC. I think the one area where I would agree with those that the complaint is that there wasn't any choice.
Mm.
So you could flick from BBC One to BBC Two and you would see the same program, right? I think it should probably be kept to BBC One. But I do think it's important that the BBC recognised that the vast majority of the country were, and I think many were surprised by just how much, but were sort of grieving, for want of a better word, and did feel a sense of loss because he was considered to be the nation's granddad, right? A man, a war veteran who dragged the monarchy screaming into the 21st century. He has done a lot for this country and to Her Majesty the Queen, no less. But I think the issue is when people don't have choice and when people can't flick from one station to the other and say, okay, well, it's very sad the prince has died, but I'd quite like to watch, I don't know, EastEnders or something, then they do have a right, I think, to say, well, this is the national broadcaster that's supposed to be there to serve us and give us choice, and you are denying me of it at this moment. Then perhaps they have some form of reason. I don't know, but I am broadly, someone who does complain about the BBC, but I can't get too animated about this one, I must admit.
Well, I think that's a really fair and even-handed set of comments you've made, because we can't really have it both ways. We can't say that the BBC hates the flag and it's unpatriotic, and there's unfortunately a lot of evidence that that is the case, and then complain when they drop everything to cover the death of a true national hero. I suspect they've gone a bit over the top by, as you say, streaming all of this on all of their channels. They could easily have kept BBC Two going with the normal programming. However, I just wonder whether this is perhaps the BBC learning on the job and certainly moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it is, but perhaps it's moving too far in the other direction. Perhaps it's becoming sort of a caricature of what it thinks a patriot looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's this sort of idea that actually, I guess it's the Keir Starmer way of doing politics. He won't be pictured without the Union Jack behind him and all of the rest of it, because he thinks that will bolster his pro-British credentials. So I think perhaps the BBC are trying to play to the gallery a little bit too much now. We don't need these sort of gimmicks and caricatures. You don't need to have it, the very sad passing of the late and great Duke of Edinburgh on every single channel. Just running it rather on your main channel strikes me as being enough to, I guess, satisfy those like myself who did actually want to commemorate this man, and many millions others who join me in doing so.
That's really interesting. It's just a reverse form of virtue signaling, and actually
exactly.
what people want, and the people, many of them listening to the show, get fed up about with the BBC, is just a lack of balance. And what they'd like is some patriotism and some political balance and a mix of different types of comedy. It's not that people want to have, Brexit FM on every radio station and to see the flag every 10 seconds. It's just a mix. That's all people are asking for.
Yeah, of course. And government ministers being able to appear on your breakfast shows and not be sneered at for daring to fly the flag and hanging a picture of Her Majesty the Queen, our most popular monarch, and someone who was respected internationally around the world. And those things, I think, that's where people get the most animated. It's not this, we don't want, as sound as you guys are, we don't want the BBC to be talk radio, because we already have talk radio, and it's fantastic as it is.
And they're not having our listeners or our viewers. And
Exactly.
Well, I think we'll say it was too much of a good thing, but still a good thing. So therefore, a grudging respect to the Beeb for that. However, Call the Midwife, that's a top BBC drama. Another thing that actually the BBC get right. It's a mainstream, very entertaining, well-made show, isn't it? But it has fallen foul of the BAFTA judges.
Yeah, so Call the Midwife star Judith Parfitt has actually blasted them and the BAFTA bosses, who've never given a hit to the BBC drama, well, in the past 10 years that it's been on telly. Now, to me, Mark, this just goes to the very heart of the problem. And I think some people many of your listeners even, might roll their eyes when commentators like me speak about whackery and mockery being a problem. But it's not just in this country as well. It's in much of the sort of what I would determine to be the cultural and media elite around the West, essentially.
Yeah.
And the problem is that many of these people at the very heart of some of our most important cultural institutions, whether that be academia, the arts, to even assaults on our language and Scrabble, even. There have been attacks today on Scrabble.
Yeah.
It These people are so powerful in that they have these seats at these tables. And if you're not, I don't know, ultra woke, if you don't have tick some identity boxes that will appeal to the sort of Twitter reading classes, then you won't get a gong. You won't get an award. Your show could be the most popular BBC hit over the last 10 years, and you still won't get a look in because you're not pandering enough to wackery and wokery. And I think that really does go to the very heart of the problem that we're presented with over recent years in this country.
It's interesting, Darren, isn't it? It's ironic to note that some of the BBC's biggest hits in the last 20, 30 years, whether it's The Office, Only Fools and Horses, Call the Midwife, all of these sorts of shows, they wouldn't be commissioned now because they don't tick enough boxes.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's exactly right. And I find that to be, frankly, quite sad. But it also suggests to me that that's exactly why Netflix, which does offer a wide range of choice, and other streaming providers as well, which do cater to many different audiences and don't just try and pander to, make sure that they don't get cancelled on Twitter and all the rest of it. Although I dare say there's an awful lot of that going on at Netflix. But, the BBC doesn't offer that choice.
Netflix wants everyone's money, doesn't it, Darren? And
well,
therefore
absolutely.
It makes content for everyone. And it's the same. You look at Netflix, you can get a really sort of gross out sort of teen comedy, or you can get a high-end drama. And Netflix understand that every viewer is a customer, something the BBC needs to do more.
Absolutely. And the BBC, I think, it goes back to what we said earlier about the caricature. The BBC has caricatures of what young people want to watch. The BBC has caricatures of what older people want to watch. And, they think every old person in the country just wants to sit down in front of Antiques Roadshow. It's that sort of, it's those sorts of ideas of that I think are completely out of touch and far removed from what the people of this country actually want.